A true winter horror story. I don't tell this story often anymore. When I do, people think I'm exaggerating, or that I dreamed it all. But every time winter comes around, every time the first snow falls, I still look out my window expecting to see it again, the snowman across the street. This happened in December of 2018, in northern Minnesota. My wife, Laura, our 8-year-old son, Evan, and I were living in a small neighborhood near Duluth. The area was quiet, long stretches of empty road, big open yards. The kind of town where people actually waved when you drove past. That winter, a brutal blizzard hit the region, the kind that traps you indoors for days. We stocked up on food, batteries, and firewood. Power flickered off and on, and the news warned people not to go outside unless absolutely necessary. The temperature dropped below -20, and the roads froze solid. The first 2 days weren't so bad. Evan built a snow fort in the front yard, and we played board games by candlelight. It almost felt cozy, like a forced little family vacation. But by the third night, things started to feel off. Day 1. The first snowman. It was early evening. The snow had slowed to a light flurry, and I went to take the trash out before the winds picked up again. As I stepped onto the porch, I noticed something strange across the street. Someone had built a snowman, tall, maybe 6 feet, right in the middle of the yard, across from ours. That yard belonged to the Jeffries family, but they'd left town 2 weeks before to visit relatives in Arizona. Their house was empty. No lights, no cars, no tracks in the snow. I stood there for a while, staring at that snowman. It looked like any other, except it was facing our house. Perfectly centered, head tilted slightly down, like it was watching. I brushed it off, thinking maybe one of the neighborhood kids had made it before the storm hit. Still, something about it felt wrong. The proportions were odd, the middle section too long, the head too small. Its stick arms weren't spread out, but pressed close to its sides, like it was standing at attention. When I came back inside, Laura asked what was wrong. I told her nothing, that I'd just seen a snowman across the street. Evan perked up, excited. Can we build one too? I told him maybe tomorrow, if the weather cleared, but it didn't. That night, the wind howled so loud it sounded like someone screaming outside. The power cut out completely around midnight. We lit candles, and I sat by the window watching the snow whip through the street, and there it was. That snowman, still standing, still facing our house. Even through the blur of snow, I could see its outline perfectly. Day 2. Footprints the next morning. The storm had calmed. I stepped out to shovel the walkway, and that's when I noticed the footprints. They weren't mine. I hadn't gone that far into the yard yet. A single set of prints, boot-shaped but narrow, led from the Jeffries driveway to the snowman. Then they stopped. No return trail. No extra paths around it. Just one straight line that ended right at the snowman's base. I walked across the road to get a closer look. The snowman was leaning slightly forward now. I could see its features, small black stones for eyes, a crooked smile carved into the snow, and what looked like a red scarf, frozen stiff around its neck. But it wasn't snowed over. Everything else around it had a new layer of frost from the night storm. Cars, fences, even mailboxes. But the snowman looked untouched, like it had been built that morning. I checked the Jeffries house, still dark, still empty. I called my neighbor, 2 doors down, Jeff, to ask if he'd seen anyone outside last night. He said no. No one in their right mind would be out in that cold. That night, we all went to bed early. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like a knock. A slow, deliberate thud, thud, thud. At first, I thought it was a branch hitting the siding. But then I heard it again. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, coming from the front door. I crept down the stairs, heart hammering. The power was still out, so I used my flashlight. The knocks stopped. When I peeked through the frosted glass of the door, there was no one there. Just the empty yard, and across the street, that snowman. Except now it looked closer. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks. But no, it was definitely nearer to the curb, maybe 10 feet closer to our side of the street. I told myself the wind must have blown snow around it, changing how it looked from a distance. I went back to bed and tried not to think about it. Day 3. Closer by the next morning, it wasn't an illusion. The snowman was now in our yard. I swear to God, there were no footprints, no trail, nothing to explain how it got there. It stood halfway between our mailbox and front porch, that same crooked smile, same scarf. Evan noticed first. He was eating breakfast by the window and said, Dad, did you move the snowman? Laura looked too, and I'll never forget the look on her face. She turned pale, set down her coffee, and whispered, "It wasn't there yesterday." I went outside immediately. The cold bit through my jacket like knives. Up close, the snowman looked different. The scarf was wet now, darker, like it had been soaked in something. Its eyes weren't stones anymore either. They were buttons. Old black buttons sewn onto patches of what looked like torn fabric, pressed into the snow. The air felt heavier around it, quiet, no birds, no wind, nothing but the faint creak of the porch behind me. I grabbed a shovel and knocked the top part off. The head rolled into the snow, scattering in chunks. I didn't want Evan seeing it again. Then I went back inside, locking the door behind me. That night, Laura and I argued about leaving. She wanted to pack up and drive to her sister's place in the city. I told her the roads were too icy, that we should wait until morning. Around 3 a.m., the power flickered on again, for just a second, long enough for the front porch light to come on, and that's when we saw it. The snowman was back, standing at the bottom of our porch steps. No footprints, no drag marks, just there. Laura screamed. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a fireplace poker, and opened the door, ready to smash it apart. But the moment I stepped outside, the wind died completely. The cold was so intense it hurt to breathe. And when I looked down, I saw something half buried in the snow by the steps. A glove. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Laura's. It was small. A child's glove, bright red, just like the scarf around the snowman's neck. Evan's glove. I ran back inside, yelling for him. He was in bed, sound asleep. When I went back to look, the snowman was gone. Day 4. The knock. We didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind made the windows rattle like someone was trying to get in. By morning, we decided to leave no matter what. I started the car early, let it warm up. But the tires spun uselessly in the driveway, frozen solid. We were trapped. Laura broke down crying, saying she saw someone outside during the night. I asked her who, and she said, "I don't know. I thought it was you." That afternoon, Evan said he wanted to play outside. I told him absolutely not. He got upset, went to his room, and slammed the door. About an hour later, I heard him talking. Not loud, just a faint voice from behind his door. I thought he was on his tablet. When I opened the door, he jumped. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. He stared at me blankly. "My friend," he said. "What friend?" He pointed to the window, and my heart nearly stopped. Outside, at the edge of the yard, the snowman was back. Its head tilted to the side again, like it was listening. "Evan," I whispered. "What did he say to you?" He looked down and said softly, "He said he wants to come inside." That night, we barricaded the doors with furniture. I kept the poker by my side. The generator kicked on around midnight, humming in the silence. Laura and I sat in the living room, watching the shadows outside. At 2:47 a.m., the knocking came again. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, but this time, it wasn't at the front door. It came from the back. I crept toward the kitchen, every step sinking with dread. Through the frost-covered glass, I saw something pale move outside. It wasn't the snowman anymore. It was shapes, several of them. Small human-sized figures standing at the edge of the yard, half obscured by falling snow. I turned on the porch light. There were 3 snowmen now, all facing the house. Day 5. The storm ends. The storm ended the next morning. The sun came out, weak and gray, and the air was eerily still. I went outside to check, half expecting to see them gone. But they weren't. 3 snowmen stood across the yard, closer than ever. Their shapes were rougher now, melting slightly in the daylight. The one in the center had something dark, frozen into its torso, a glove. The red one, Evan's glove. I shouted for him. He came running from the living room, perfectly fine, confused why I was yelling. When I turned back, I swear the center snowman's head had turned. That was enough. We packed what we could, got into the car, and pushed through the snow until we reached the main road. I didn't look back. Aftermath, we stayed at Laura's sister's for a week. When I finally returned home, the snow had melted enough to see the ground again. The snowmen were gone. But there were depressions in the grass where they'd been long. Narrow marks that looked less like snowmelt and more like something had stood there for days. And across the street, the Jeffries house had a new addition to its yard. A single snowman, small, perfectly shaped, with a child-sized scarf wrapped around its neck. I don't know what we saw out there. I've read about hypothermia, about snow hallucinations from isolation and stress. But hallucinations don't leave footprints. They don't take gloves. And they don't knock on doors. Every winter since then, I keep an eye on the yard. The snow never piles quite right where those things stood, and sometimes, when the moonlight hits the frost, just so, I think I can see small handprints in the snow, leading from the street to our porch. I've made sure to never build another snowman. And if you ever find one outside your house after a storm, especially one you didn't make, don't look out the window after dark. Because sometimes, it looks back.